I think it starts with something that's community-based, where there's interaction with each other, with all life, with environment, and with everything in this world that makes us up and that contributes to our being. And I think so that it's community-based, that it's person-centered, so that each person, him or her or they or whomever, has a chance to explore and engage with the world as they are learning to do so, and as they learn more than what they had learned before, changes into something new. It's provisional. Knowledge is provisional. We only know what we know until we learn more, I think. And so that this process is allowed, it's not pushed, it's allowed to proceed at the rate that's natural, that's important, that's meaningful to the individual. So it's person-centered, and then I think I mentioned this kind of in that little snippet, but it's that that it's curiosity-driven. Right? That the curriculum is formed itself by where the interests lead, and that there's a on top in all this there's definitely a thoughtful facilitation. In other words, it's a very dedicated and engaged presence of a guide or a person who's around to kind of to help this be navigable and to help this be in existence. That the environment is in some ways modified or manipulated or helped along so that it can be community or organized, and that it can be something that each person can really explore his or her true passions. And so if someone's passionate about something and they have questions, well, then it's important that there's another presence there who might be able to come in and answer a question with a question and further that questioning spirit into deeper and deeper involvement. Not that a question can be met or should be met with answers, because I think that in some ways just blunts the scientific process, the experimental process, the process of investigating. I think if you judge something or you answer something outright, it can allow that for that thing to kind of lose its flair and lose its beautifulness. And if it loses its beautifulness, it might not be searched for, it might not be looked at, it might not be explored anymore. And so I think that it's important that if questions are there, that be met and then in some ways helped along to further the investigation process, the research process, the learning process, but not in a way that any question ever really has an answer that's final, because I don't think that's not the law of life. I think life is transitory. I think life goes on. I think we are in a process of change constantly. That's what life is, and to have any kind of thing come up that's knowledge, it's that we can use it in some practical way, that it's transferable to our life as we see it or as we navigate in it. And that as we learn more, we learn to navigate differently. And that each new thing is its own thing. It's context based. So we learn to be in the world in a perceptive way rather than an assertive way. If we assert something or we deny it, it's something that kind of stops us from really exploring it, really seeing it, really looking at it, and examining it, and appreciating it, and being there in it. And so there's a perceptive quality to all this, I think. And so I think the real thing to engender, I think, for a group of young humans, or anyone really, is that it's open. And that if there is any curriculum, because any system of schooling that kind of has to be adhered to, that curriculum is done, it's exercised in a creative way, in a fun way, in a playful way, in a way that the interests can grow if they're there, and then it's done, and then there's play. And an open exploration, because I think in play we learn to be resilient. I think in play we learn to be socially adept. In play we navigate things and go into things deeply without even knowing how deeply we're going into something. We put on different hats of perspective, different glasses of perspective. We get to explore the world in kind of in a way where we are unimpeded by the layers of responsibility and the layers of societal like prescriptions and cultural norms, and we get beyond some of that for a little bit to really get into some learning that matters, that's profound, I think. So I think play and open exploration and being able to navigate in a person-centered, curiosity-driven, community-based way is where it's at. So I think that right now that's where I would go with some of these thoughts, and where I would want something to be in terms of its operating kind of procedures. I think the work of a guide or someone who is present, as someone who pays attention and is there to really try to really see what's going on first and stand back and let things happen and think about what might be an appropriate course of redirection or an expansion of what is present to explore. That's a hard job. It's much harder than being a teacher who just fills young people's heads and minds with interpretations or facts, as people commonly call them. I'm more in line with like Nietzsche's, that there are no facts, just interpretations, and Robert Anton Wilson's idea of reality tunnels. And I think that's important. And it also helps us become more tolerant as individuals, if we can see that our history and our feelings and our emotions and the books we've read and the relationships we've had, they go into how we subjectively experience this moment. And if we realize that we're different people and that differentiation is in fact what brings a functioning quality to a system, and that the different parts of the whole are what bring the whole its infinite wonderfulness and ability to continue to explore and learn about it. These different parts are what make us and make living interesting, not boring. And I think so. I think if we realize that, instead of making it about like just rote memorization of facts, learning how to be in the world, learning how to be and do, and learning how to learn, versus just learning how to regurgitate stuff, and that we're actually learning to be critical and also have fun in this process of engagement with living, that we're actually into life, that we see the relationships that are constantly changing and that are constantly a fundamental part and parcel aspect of what we are. This was in me this morning, and I want to let it come out, and it's more thoughts on from the hip, organic, I think. Of course, I think about these things from time to time, for as long as I can remember. But this morning, from the hip, right now, like what it might be like to have because it's not just totally free, right? This school that might be created that we're involved with, this learning environment, this learning space, I think should be protected. But it's still a space, and we can cultivate that space, and we can put some thought into how the day is structured. Even though it's very unstructured at base, it still has a kind of guidance to it that I think is important. And so it's not perfect, and there's an allowance for a lot of looseness in there, and a lot of like spontaneity, and a lot of like, oh, well, this isn't working right now, but something like it over here might be great, and let's be perceptive enough and thoughtful enough and then courageous enough to make that move to jump into a different direction that is equally or more invitational in the sense of some young humans or some individuals' interest or curiosity or exploration opportunity. So I guess like one thing I envision is that there's a fridge somewhere or a kitchen or food that is always available to the humans. And Brooks and I have talked about this. I think Shaylin and I talked about this too. And it's that I love that line, that Ray Peat line, where he says, the attempt to steer a person can make it hard for them to move because it inactivates their own guidance system. And I think this can apply to eating. I think as parents, sometimes we think we know what's best for our young ones, and we want to say, you got to eat at this time, and you got to eat this, and you got to eat everything that's on your plate. And I think, young people are more intuitive than that, and they know what they need to do. And if there's enough options in the environment, and there's an allowance for them to be able to choose, I think there's great power in that, in that they, one, kind of know intuitively what they need and what they want. If we let them make those decisions, it's that shit and shinola thing. We can still keep the shit out of the kitchen, but the good stuff, the good options, the stuff that might actually provide something that can come into our bodies and then be energy, be fuel, and also something that tastes good and digests well. I think that's important. And so if those options are there, then the young human, or any human, if they've learned to trust this inner guidance system, will be able to make quality moves. And that my quality move might be different than her quality move, and that's okay. And so I think that's important to have available, and for someone to learn through habit and through experience that it's okay to trust your own guidance system. That we don't need someone to tell us what to do. There's so much in our world right now that seems like someone else is telling other people what's right for them. And there's that Alan Watts line, which I love so much, and I sometimes don't remember it totally accurately the way he said it, but it's something to the effect of the monkey saying to the fish, "Kindly let me help you. Kindly let me save you from drowning." The monkey said to the fish, putting the fish safely up a tree. And it's that idea that we might think something is powerful for us, but to then make the mistake, I think it's a mistake sometimes, to think that it's going to be powerful in the same way or to the same degree, or even that it'll be powerful at all to another person. So anyway, that might be an element where we have a kitchen that's open with lots of fresh fruits and vegetables and dairy and just fresh, good, nutrient-dense, whole food options that are available at any time. So that's part of it. I think the beginning of the day, honestly, should be free, exploration-based. Like I've heard some people talk about how when the energy is the highest, when the levels haven't been tapped into yet, the energy levels for a day, that's when they should be academic. But I don't necessarily think that, because I think what we learn through play is how to we learn to be resilient, we learn to be socially adept, we learn so much. We learn to be inventive. We learn to look at things with different perspectives. We learn to try on different perspectives. Play is unbeatable, I think, as far as part of the learning process, and we forget that. And I think that the sooner we strip play from a person's life, the quicker we stifle where that life can go for a person. I know Summerhill took it to a whole extreme, but it was that really they could be free and to play and wonder and wander as much as they want for as long as they want. And I agree with most of that. And that what he saw is that the longer that children or young humans decided when they wanted to get engaged with something, and when they did want to get engaged with something that was important to them, that was an academic thing, they were ready. They knew they were ready, and they decided on their own that they were ready, and they went in deeply. And it didn't take very long for them to explore deeply that subject or that topic or that interest. And that as a part of that, they need to be able to exercise that play before, as a prehistory to that kind of deep involvement in something else that someone might consider more academic. And I see that. I see a non-compulsory attitude and flavor to whatever it is, and that there might be lessons each day that are loosely encouraged, but that someone can participate to the level of his or her liking. Because I think the quickest way to dump the joy of learning on its head and make it not a fun process is to try to force someone. I think it's not good. I think we see that in the walls of the conventional classroom, in the last 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. You just see it. You see people losing the joy of life and the joy of learning, which in life and learning are synonymous, I think. And learning becomes not transferable, not practical, not usable in real life. And you put them in walls and you make them sit in a seat and not be able to move around. You're doing so many things there to just stifle the way the mind works and operates, and you put fences around things. And I just think that's probably not good. But it makes for a society, citizens that are more easily cajolable or controllable, or easier to tell, I think, what to do. And easier to sell things to. So that might be part of it, and I think there's something different. I don't want to say better, I just think there's something different. And if you're looking for something different, there's something different, where a young human gets to, for him or herself, decide how they want to go about, and that there's a powerfulness that's being built in that, and a confidence that can be built in that is just undeniable, and to me seems to have far-reaching effects as far as the chance for that young human, young person, or man or woman or person in general to be happy for a long time in life, I think. The ability to choose what they want to engage in, and then be engaged and live in a way that's engaging. So I think that's important. So I think the beginning of the day should be, lots of roaming and playing and exploration. And if I was like a guide person in the environment, I'm just watching, I'm perceiving, I'm maybe joining in, but maybe stepping out, but I'm watching everything. It's a hard job. It's harder than being a teacher and trying to force information, or wrote facts into someone's head. That's easy to lecture, but to actually be perceptive and be engaged and be present and watch what's going on for subtle cues and subtle ways to either redirect or reinvigorate or open an environment, a world that wasn't maybe being tapped into, that maybe there's a part of that can be opened into a new place that expands the possibilities for that young human. That's a hard job, and I like that job. But I think that's what it's more about. And I think for when the energy levels are highest in a young human, I think that energy should be able to be put to play, because then play will be given its fair shake. I think any lessons that are covered can be task-oriented or problem-solving oriented, in that we're looking at a task that embeds a cross-curriculum approach that has all the subjects in it. And so I actually think once the play period or the free exploration period, if we are going to engage in then a next period or a next chapter of the day, it would be something like some questions to start. A couple questions that are posed, that we have quiet time to look at each person, each man, a young human in him or herself, to look at and to think about and reflect and do some writing on, maybe jot, maybe draw some pictures, maybe diagram, and just think, and then get together in small groups before we do like maybe partners, and they talk about, one person shares their ideas, and then there's a response and a share back, and some people call it pair sharing or whatever, or pair share. And then then the bigger group discussion that can be brought into light, and that can be enjoyed, and where everyone can have their voice, and it can be facilitated, so to speak, in a way where we ask for share outs, and with the public expression of something like, everything is good here. Everything aired is good. There's nothing bad to say, because what happens is we get conversation going. And if someone says something, it might spark another idea in someone else, or it might spark a thought in another person, and the conversation can be facilitated or navigated in a way that we build on it, and we share time together. And so that it's all good. The only rule, if there's a rule, is that if you're asked to bring forward some of your reflections, then we're asking you to say something or share something, even if that is something that is I don't have anything to share today. That can be respected, but that it's that there's an invitation and an acceptance of everyone's voice mattering in a great way, whether that's a small voice today or a big voice tomorrow, and that we're teaching some greater kind of things as far as like honoring diversity and honoring opinions, and that we have different ways of looking at things, interpretations, and that interpretation over time or over the next few minutes can certainly change, or we can play with different perspectives. So then, speaking of perspectives, the next period I would say would be something I call number sense. And this is being able to look at numbers and make sense of them, but I also expand this to being able to look at anything and expand what's possible for our ways of looking at something. So being able to try on different perspectives, being able to really like train or habituate or just get better at our flexibility of being. And so looking at a scenario and playing this game or puzzle of like, can I look at one thing and then and then choose to create a way of looking at that one thing in 6 or 7 or 10 different ways? Can I rearrange, elements or look from a different lens, and what can we really discover about this situation? How can we move this here and move that there, and just play puzzles and investigate our ways of looking at things. So I'm definitely rambling, but I think in general there's this is how I built my classroom day to day when I was in the conventional model of teaching business, and it seemed to be highly engaging. And there was a very high level, it seemed to me, and I got this feedback from other people who came into the room to watch. The participation level was very high, higher than other classrooms they had seen, and it was just like a buy-in to this kind of thing. Then after that, it would be the task or the problem-solving adventure, or some kind of task that, like I said, embeds across subjects and includes many different elements and opportunities for exploration. And that the next day it might be a similar kind of process, and then it might be a new task, or it might be a continuation of a task from the previous day. And then always some kind of a reflection, a writing reflection or a drawing reflection, or some type of an exit ticket right before we leave, I would say. And then of course, part of this is that we could embed into the day, and this is partly part of the morning, but just it's an overall active approach. No one's confined to a seat for extended periods of time. If you want to move, or you feel like you need to move, or you need to go investigate something or explore something, or go to the bathroom or go get something to eat, you can, and that's important. And that we're learning to manage our own selves and learn to be responsible for our own selves, even if that's something that we're in the illusion business of. But it's something, at least I'd rather think that I'm responsible for myself than to think that I'm not, at least as I'm thinking it right now. And speaking of which, some of these things I've said about what this learning environment might look like, or this ideal learning space to me, it might change tomorrow as I see it, or there might be little shifts and ways of moving it to this kind of idea or this idea. But I mean, in general, I think what it is it's process oriented, it's person centered. So those are two things. And part of so it's person centered. It's the person drives the education. Didn't Tolstoy say something like, education should if education is good, it should manifest itself like hunger? And I think that's an individual thing. And so it's person centered, it's human centered, it's young human centered, and it's driven by curiosity. And that curiosity allows us to engage with whatever task or adventure as it is as a process, not as something that we're trying to get to some destination of, and that it's community based. So we have in it the opportunity to see relationship and to be in relationship with other people and all other things that are life underneath them. So just a few thoughts as I see them today, right now. which could change.